I'd like to call the November 21st, 2022 meeting of the Select Board and Sewer Commissioners meeting to order. We will start, as we usually do, with residents' concerns.
Hi, are you taking public comment during the road safety update? The road safety update, will you take public comment during that agenda item? There's no vote. Yes? Okay, thanks.
Okay, I believe we have some folks online. Matt, can you let one in?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The first one is a call-in user. Can you let us know who they are and where they're from? You should be able to unmute and speak.
Hi, this is Tara from MassDOT. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello. Thank you. The first thing I'd like to say is that we found online the description of the sewer rehab project that is being conducted with the MassWorks grant, and it sure did sound like expansion was included there. There was references to enabling expansion and installing things that would make expansion easier, which I figure bigger pipes or something. But it sure sounded like things that would be included in expansion scope, and I hope that did not go against the town meeting warrant article that was the modified to specifically exclude all expansion expenses, and that was a debt warrant 2/3, and I think that was quite binding. My second comment is that on 68 Parker, I noticed that you've got the sewer connection on the agenda today, and it was my understanding that you had at least one executive session marked that you were talking about the potential purchase of the property. And I hope that that was not used as a method to have additional discussion about the sewer connection for 68 Parker, but do it under the shroud of executive session in a way that I hope is not disingenuous. The third thing I'd like to talk about is at the 88 Parker Grace property that is being proposed for a 40B, 300 some units. I'd like to make mention that that is the last open space parcel that side of the tracks for hundreds of families that live there that do not have ready access to conservation land. And I hope that the town buys that property. It is listed as, I believe, $300,000 worth because it doesn't have much by right building there. And I think it would be a really awesome deal, an excellent value to buy that property. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, Matt.
Michael Schulz. You should be able to unmute.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great, thank you. This is Michael Schultz from 24 Brucewood Road. Believe it or not, I'm not going to talk about the 100 Discovery Way proposal tonight, at least not much. I'll refer to it only briefly. If this can't be part of the public record, I'm fine with that. And I promise this will only take about 3.5 minutes. I've timed it. Is that acceptable?
Mr. Schultz, there's not really much point in you going on with this. We're not going to be talking about 100 Discovery Way today. We will do it at a subsequent meeting, and I think it would be more appropriate if you spoke then.
Yeah, and I understand that. I only want to talk about ESS boxes in general, not about that proposal.
Very briefly, please.
Very briefly. Okay, you got it. All right. As you all probably know, Blue Wave now plans to file a new application with a new site plan for the 2 large ESS boxes that it has proposed. The new location would be about midway between the gastroenterology office at 48 Discovery Way and the offices of Hill-Rom, a medical equipment manufacturer, at 100 Discovery Way. But I don't want to talk about that tonight, because the more I've done research on ESS technology, the more I've grown concerned about the dangers that ESS boxes pose to the entire town, not just residents of my neighborhood. First, I want to note that there is nothing solar, quote unquote, about ESS boxes. I've talked to people who don't want to hear about the dangers because, well, how can you be against solar energy? But these ESS boxes...
Sir,
Yes, sir.
I asked you to be very brief and to keep your remarks very pointed, and you're basically reading what you had planned to read anyway, and I'll give you 30 seconds more to make your point, and then we're going to cut you off.
Very good. First, amend our zoning bylaw so that there is a specific use or category for ESS boxes, because they're very dangerous. Second, amend the master plan. Third, we've got to dismantle or move the ESS box that currently sits in the Acton Boxborough Boardwalk School campus near Charter Road. An ESS box should be nowhere near our school children. Fourth and last, people with authority in this town should visit and inspect all the ESS boxes that exist are being built in Acton. That's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Matt, do we have anyone else?
No, we do not, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Mangiarotti, manager's update.
Thank you. Just a few brief updates. I'm pleased to report that within the last week or so, Governor Baker signed the Economic Development Bill. And as part of this, our state delegation worked to include a few projects that help support Acton initiatives. One was $200,000 is going to go to the Boston Area Gleaners Incorporated for capital initiatives at Stonefield Farm, located on Martin Street in Acton. This is a project that town meeting supported last year, and it's something that the community is very excited about. So having $200,000 will help them with some capital work that they need to do on the farm. So that's exciting. The second item is a project that we've been trying to work on at our own Nathaniel Allen Recreational Area, Nara Park. We need to replace the footbridge that goes across the pond. We've applied for CPC funds in this most recent round, and I'm pleased to report that in that bill there's $200,000 to help towards that effort. So it's really going to make take a big portion of the work and limit what we'll be seeking from CPC or other sources. So it's very exciting, and thanks to our state delegation for advocating for Acton among their many other priorities. I also want to mention that Julie Pierce has coordinated another effort very quickly and effectively. Small Business Saturday is sort of a national campaign, informal national campaign that many communities try to encourage people to shop locally, and we've jumped all over that here. We have 70 businesses in Acton that have signed up to participate, whether they're offering special deals or just want to be part of the program. So I would encourage everyone to shop locally every day, but in particular on Saturday, November 26th, and support your local businesses who are all looking forward to your patronage and your shopping there. And thank you to Julie, the EDC members, and many staff and volunteers who put this together very quickly, and I hope it works out. One final item is I'm excited and looking forward to presenting an updated 10-year capital investment plan on December 5th, and then the town manager's recommended annual budget on December 19th. Both of those meetings will be posted as joint meetings with the Finance Committee to help with the process that started last year to help make sure that both boards have the same understanding of those presentations and have the budget process have better communication right from the outset. So I look forward to those two big nights for us, and the team has been working to put it together, and look forward to your feedback. Thanks.
Thank you. Members?
Sure, I got a couple of things.
Jim?
So I'm the liaison to the Open Space and Recreation Plan group, and I just wanted to highlight what a successful evening they had gathering feedback. Sadly, I couldn't be there, but I know that at least David was there, and maybe others of you were there. We've been asked by that steering committee to spend some time at a December meeting talking about their new 4 main goals for the OSRP. And so I've asked John and Dean to have that on some December agenda to review these new goals. That was all I was planning to say. I know that my heart's kind of heavy tonight for a couple of reasons. Partly the failure of the climate negotiations, the Conference of Parties, to create any, binding steps forward about getting away from fossil fuels. Kind of highlights for me how much the importance of us doing things here, because we're not getting much help. And the other is the shooting in Colorado Springs at a gay bar. Just devastating. I know all these mass shootings are horrible, but for some reason this one has really pierced me. So just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you. Other comments? Fran?
To quickly just follow up with the Human Services Committee, which we had our second meeting. The officers were chosen, and they're working on compiling information and resources the town already has. So I'm looking forward to working with them and getting that job done. And also to just jump on what John had said about Julie putting together Small Business Saturday. There should be a map and I don't know if that's going to be publicized. So there's a kind of a funky map, which is cool. So that'll be fun.
Thank you. Imogen?
Yes, very quickly, just wanted to give thanks to Madeline for organizing a town-wide group prayer for the student who was injured and hit by the car. He is recovering, which is good. So just wanted to give a shout out of thanks, and also to all the people who showed up, and even those who weren't able to, but still sent in their prayers, and also for our local religious leaders to also show up. That was really good to see. And then also kind of on Jim's bandwagon, just wanted to give a shout out and send prayers to people in Indonesia. Hopefully there's some resolution, but yeah, these types of natural disasters are never easy.
Thank you. I have 2 items to bring up. Number one, just to update the board, Design Review Board is still pondering and considering some sort of possible regulations regarding land clearing and tree protection. I'm not sure how quickly that's going to advance, but they did meet last week. There was some good discussion about it. So I'm sure that there'll be some follow-up in the months to come. Along those lines, I think it's important for folks to understand that Green Acton has a land use committee, which is also looking at similar topics. And I think it's just important that everyone realizes that Green Acton, certainly a worthy organization, is not a town board or committee, just so that there's no confusion about the parallel paths of Design Review Board, which is a town committee, and Green Acton, which is a private nonprofit, pursuing the same goals, but certainly do not have the same official sanction. So just to clarify that, there seems to be some bleed over from one group to the other. The second item is that looking at the way we've been conducting our meetings and following to a certain extent with the decision made by the AB School District back in the summer, we're going to be eliminating audience participation at select board meetings. This will be the last meeting in which we will allow that. We encourage folks to email us to attend the meetings in person, but we just will not be accepting audience participation. Certainly, board members and consultants working for the town might still participate in Zoom. We do have some provisions in state law that allows that remote participation, but we're going to curtail the remote audience participation in the future. I frankly think that
I think the virtual participation, I think, is, just to clarify, right? Virtual participation.
we will have public participation in person.
Right, I think that was the confusion.
Yep. Certainly, public participation in person in the meetings is certainly encouraged, and I think from a point of view of civic participation, I think it's the best way to go with it. But I think we've been far enough outside the pandemic, and I don't think there's a good reason to continue to accept remote participation through the Zoom app. So that will start at our next meeting.
So will that mean that we'll still have a Zoom option for people who want to tune in to listen to the meeting, or is that also not?
Absolutely. The IT department will establish a means in which we'll still be participating. Everything will still be televised and available. It's just we won't be accepting public input.
I'm just confused by this, only because the COVID-19 guidelines do last until March 23rd, so I didn't know.
Right, and those are voluntary. Boards and committees can waive them. I say this has been the situation with the AB school district starting back in August. So we'll basically be mirroring the same procedure that they use, and our partners over at the schools use.
I'm still confused on the decision being made. Have we ever thought about people with disability, our elderly residents that can't make these meetings at this time at night?
Yes, I have thought about that. Thank you.
Hi, Alyssa Nickel, School Street. I just want to take the opportunity to say that I'm very disappointed with this decision. There was a lot of discussion, I don't remember how many months ago, about the incredible increase in civic engagement that happened because we were meeting virtually, and that was one of the reasons that this board decided to continue the hybrid meeting. It doesn't seem to make any sense to continue Zoom if there will be no public participation, because if you want to tune in without being able to speak, you can just watch on cable TV, ActonTV. So the people who have challenges getting here because of disabilities, parents with young children who can't leave. There's a lot of single parents in Acton. There are a lot of parents with really little ones. I mean, somebody called into the meeting and said, it's been so nice to be able to participate in a meeting when I'm at home nursing a baby. So I just want to state for the record that this is super disappointing, because I really appreciated the opportunity to draw a lot more people into the activity of the government. Thanks.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure I understand. We're still allowing public participation.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. He didn't identify himself.
You identify yourself, please?
I am Daniel Gilfix, and I am from South Acton. I just wanted to try to understand, are we talking about all public participation or just remote public participation? Okay. And then, so the school committee has decided this as well. There's no remote participation, and the reasoning behind that was related to COVID?
I do not know what their thought process was.
But what about the select board's process?
It's the chair's option.
Okay.
Imogen.
Yeah, sorry, I know we have to move on, but is it possible if we could maybe put this to a board vote or kind of get more thoughts on this? Because I do think that having the online participation, and I've also heard this too personally, that it has been helpful for people, and I do know that the school committee, at least to my understanding, for some time has not allowed for public participation via online, but the select board, I think that the way that we've been doing it has been helpful for people. So I don't know if there's interest in us putting this to a vote or maybe holding off on this decision until a future meeting when we can put this on as an agenda item to get more input, but would love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you for your thoughts. I believe we have some people online.
Yes, Mr. Chair. First up is Tara. You should be able to unmute yourself and speak.
Oh, I actually didn't mean to have my hand up. I sent in my comments. I feel like just because the school committee isn't inclusive doesn't mean that that's a good excuse to be less inclusive at the select board, where town-wide decisions are made rather than the schools, which is for about 25% of the population. And I think that Alyssa and Madeline, the others, said it for me. This seems really unfortunate, and I wish I had worked harder to have a different chair, I guess, if the chair is going to be kind of tyrannical, as I view it, to remove something that just seemed like such a wonderful thing, one of the beautiful things that came out of COVID. And I agree that it should be a democratic decision, not just the chair. Even if the chair is allowed to make the decision, sometimes just being allowed to do something isn't the right thing to do, as we find with ruthless capitalism, for example. Just because you can cheat people doesn't mean that you should. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Matt.
Next up is Terrence Lobo. Terrence, you should be able to speak.
Hi, I just wanted to say I'm disappointed in the decision as well. Right now, I'm sitting in my car and attending the meeting on Zoom. I wanted to be there in person, but I couldn't be there in person, and Zoom works for me as I'm right there right now on Zoom, and you're taking away something that I would have potentially used in the future. I hope you will reconsider this.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments, Matt?
That does it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So we have a notice of public hearing. The Acton Select Board will hold a public hearing on November 21st, 2022 at 7:10 p.m., continued from November 7th, 2022, in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room, 204 at the Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, and virtually actonmass.gov/meetings/BOS on the application of BWC Colesbrook LLC for a site plan special permit under zoning bylaws section 10.4 at 100 Discovery Way for an energy storage facility. Application materials and how to participate remotely are available online and at Acton Town Hall, http://acton-ma.gov/ds-web/view/collection-15376. The applicant is requesting a continuance until December 5th, 2022 at 7:30 p.m. I'll entertain a motion to continue this until December 5th, 2022.
I move to continue this hearing until December 5th. I'm sorry, what time did you say?
7:30 p.m.
7:30 in this place.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor? of Mr. Martin's motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, it's been moved until December 5th. We're still a little bit early for the, Mr. Mangiarotti.
That, just a note on that last hearing, it's my understanding that the Board of Health will be taking up that matter either on the 6th or the 13th, and the Zoning Board of Appeals, or the Board of Appeals, rather. Oh, no, the Planning Board. In any event, there's two meetings that relate to this project that are happening after December 5th, so there's a strong likelihood that there'll be another request to continue further, and I guess we'll have to just take it one step at a time, but I wanted to just mention that.
Thank you. Jim?
A question. During virtual public participation, we heard about the idea of a modified application with a new location, and I wonder if staff knew anything about, when such a, is that such a plan happening, and if so, is there a time when it would be available for us to look at?
Yeah, so the applicant is working with the Board of Health on the changes to the plans that you're referencing, and I think we will share them with the board as soon as we have them in hand and able to share them. The Board of Appeals is looking at the issue of the zoning determination early in December as well.
Thank you. Hey, well, we've still got about 15 or 20 minutes before our scheduled discussion of cable TV license. Let's move ahead to new and special business. Mr. Mangiarotti, would you discuss item 7?
Yes, thank you. So the last 2 years, we did not have a fireworks celebration on July 4th. Public health reasons primarily, but other reasons too. The event requires a lot of support from donations. The fireworks were, I believe, entirely funded through large donations from local businesses, which we didn't feel comfortable even talking to them about during the pandemic. And I just wanted to touch base with the board now because the planning for that event would have to start pretty much now. It's an event that costs us between $40,000 and $50,000 as an organization to run. When you consider that we have to have the entire police department on that day, and only a handful to 10 of them are actually scheduled, and the rest are all on overtime. And the rest of, and we also have a large number of fire department staff they have to bring on that day for the fireworks detail and just for safety details. So, and in the past, the town has paid for that through our own operating budgets. In the 2 years that we haven't had the event, the police and the fire departments have used that funding to just cover the cost of how their operations have increased. And so the funding isn't really there right now to just load back in. So we would actually be putting in funding in the FY24 budget for fireworks. And as I mentioned, I'll be presenting the budget to the board on December 19th. And I wanted to just touch base before I make a recommendation that includes adding $30,000 to $40,000 to $50,000 into the budget for fireworks. That is what the board wants me to do. Or if you want to look at alternative ideas, some communities like nearby communities charge per car. And I don't know if they make back enough to cover the event, but I'm sure that, we never charged. It was free. So there's potentially an opportunity to offset the cost of the event. I doubt that we'd offset the full amount, but that's just one suggestion. Another suggestion is to maybe wait again and not do it and plan a big extravaganza for as part of the other planning that we're doing for the anniversary that's coming up for the 250th. So those are some of the things that we were talking about internally, and I said, well, I need to bring this to the board. If you recall, I think I brought this to the board last year around this time, and so here we are.
Comments from the members? Jim?
Well, I've certainly read plenty of people who missed the fireworks, but I'm also aware of the financial crunch that we're headed into, and the idea of having that $40,000 or $50,000 available potentially for other things that are particularly urgent calls me. I'm okay with waiting and considering, doing something special on July 4th in or around the 250th anniversary. So it could be in April. I think that's it. I think the idea of charging for it is going to cover such a low percentage of the cost and because it's the wonderful thing about it has been that it's such an inclusive event. So I don't think going the route of charging for it is the right way to go.
Thank you. Other comments? David?
So, I'm kind of disappointed, right? I would love to do the fireworks. I think it's been a really important way of getting the community together. I guess if we can't, we can't. But, if someone made a motion that we do the fireworks, I would vote for it. I think it is really, really important that, it was, we're a big community. There are very few things that we can, invite many, 10,000 of us to come. And this was one. And I thought it was, pretty special when we did it. It was something that my family certainly looked forward to every year, and we went every year. If we hold off until 2025, I would not want to do this in April. You can get a warm day in April, that's fine, but you may not, and warm in April is 60, or 65, right? It's not the same as, a 75-degree night. And so, I don't think it'd be as much fun to sit on the wet lawn in April. And so, if we wait till 2025, I would still propose that we do it in July. But I don't know. I would like to see us figure out a way to do it.
Thank you. Other comments? Imogen?
Thank you. I also really love the fireworks. I know that it is an event that draws a lot of young people too, and it is something that brings a lot of the community together. I also understand that it is a pretty big financial investment. So maybe I wonder if we can maybe get Julie's perspective and maybe other staff's perspective on ways that we can engage not only just the small businesses here in Acton, but maybe in other towns. Maybe we could work with other towns to try to offset it, especially because I do know that a lot of people in other towns do come to Acton for the fireworks. And I think that was mentioned last year as well when we were talking about this. So I wonder if maybe we could explore it, but with the understanding that if these conversations don't pan out, then this is something we could delay.
Thank you. David?
I'm just wondering, just off the top of my head, if it might be possible to have a fireworks fund which individuals contribute to. I think there might be many people who are willing to do that. If we, advertised if you'd like to contribute to the fireworks, send a donation here. I bet you we'd get a lot of donations. Whether it offsets $30,000 or $40,000, I don't know, but I bet you it's quite a bit of money. And it's really, really nice, the businesses that have donated to the fireworks in the past, but I think we can ask, others also just not to burden the businesses who may have gone through I'd be very grateful if they wanted to contribute again, but also maybe not burden them, since some of them may have had a difficult past couple of years.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, what's the typical cost of the fireworks themselves that is underwritten by businesses?
It's in the past few years, it's been $18,000 for the fireworks alone. and then the fire detail is on top of that, and, related expenses. So yeah, the fireworks themselves, just the firework contractor is $18,000.
So I think if we don't get any contributions, we're not really talking about a $50,000 bill. We're probably talking close to a $70,000 bill that we would have to pay by the time if we were to staff up, pay the overtime, and if the town paid for the fireworks ourselves.
No, the $50,000 included the $18,000 for fireworks.
Okay.
But yeah, it would, if we had the donations for the $18,000 of the fireworks, then, the approximately $30,000 or so more would be, all the logistics that go into it and the people that we need to run it is the rest of it.
So I guess what we should discuss, because the manager needs to get his budget prepared, I appreciate the idea of a fireworks fund, but that's not guaranteed money. So I guess the question is, do we ask the manager to include that in his plans for his 2024 budget or not? I'd accept a motion one way or another on that. David?
I would move that we ask the town manager to budget for fireworks next year, realizing that when we come to approve the budget, we can make an adjustment.
Okay, we've got a motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Motion moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Jim?
It seems like that this would be, this only works if there is a fundraising process. And it seems like at the same time as we're requesting putting this into the budget, we should also request that we, initiate a fundraising process. So we're not just kicking this back onto the town's budget. I'm not sure if that's an amendment to the motion or what.
David?
I'm sorry. I don't know how we do that logistically, right? Because if we ask people to send in donations and then we end up not doing it, then how do we return those donations? That would be very hard. I think we'd have to make a guesstimate for what we would get in a fundraising effort, right? Whether it was half the money or 60% of the money or something at the time we approve the budget. And if we feel that that's the remainder is too much, then we would have to remove it.
Fran?
I used to like fireworks. My family would go to the Acton fireworks. I feel like that's a lot of money. And I would love to maybe see something, instead of fireworks, maybe morph into some sort of town gathering, like a carnival, or I don't know what that would look like, but it doesn't necessarily have to be actual fireworks.
Thank you. From the audience.
Mike Ellen, Harris Street. We do have a fundraising arm, if you will, in town, and that's the recreation department. They essentially raise money for events at Narrow Park throughout the summer, all of the concerts and things like that. So we do have the ability, if we have to, raise additional funds. And I think that there would be businesses who would want to have, fireworks in town. It usually draws about 5,000 people, and many of them from out of town. So there's the potential of additional business that they could pick up from it. So I wouldn't want that to be the thing that stops the board from moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Alyssa Nichols, South Acton. I was going to just say that we talk a lot about regionalization, and because several people have mentioned that other town folk come, people from Littleton, people from Manor, people from Boxborough, that maybe we could do a regional event. But in addition to saying that, Fran inspired me to agree that it doesn't need to be fireworks. It could be a light show. It could be, I think there are, maybe not in this country, but in other countries, they're starting to do drone displays. Fireworks have a lot of really terrible environmental impacts. They also terrify pets, not just dogs and cats, but also livestock. So I would be very in support of a festival, a fair, a light show, a drone display, and that might be the same amount of money. It might be less because we don't have to have the fire folks on hand in case of an explosion. But I feel like we can have other towns and town businesses from other towns support the funding efforts, as well as exploring creative alternatives to fireworks.
Thank you. So I hope things are really clear to you now, John.
Well, just a note on the drones, because ever since I saw him at, I think it was the Beijing Olympics a few years ago, I was very impressed with them, and I wanted to try to find a way to get him here. They're very, very, I mean, those ones were very expensive, but even the ones that would be available to us are very, very expensive, orders of magnitude, more than 100,000. But I think that would be awesome to pull that. So that would be a lot more fundraising, though.
I think, well, we can take a vote. I think we need to split possible funding away from possible fundraising. And I think we need to give the manager some instructions. You know, worst case scenario, we can do all the fundraising, but if we have to make commitments early on for, we'll call it fireworks for now, I think those contracts probably need to get signed within the next couple of months. And we won't know where we stand on fundraising at that point. So I think we really need to let the town manager know whether he should be carrying, for lack of a better number, $50,000 in his budget for some kind of an event on the 4th of July. And then can see where it goes from there. If everybody would like to, David.
Just perhaps by the time we get to budget time, we could ask the manager to, ask the Recreation Department to estimate what they would get back in fundraising. Since they do, as Mr. Gowing points out, since they do fundraise for many events over the summer, perhaps they can say for that we could probably get some number, and then at budgeting time we would know what the leftover amount would be, and we can decide whether that's a reasonable amount or not.
John, do you think that this is something that can be done between now and the budget meeting on the 19th, or do you want to talk about it again on the 5th?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think yes. I think the direction that I received, I think tonight, is that it's not something that we want to skip, and you want me to try to figure something out. But generally, in the past we were successful, much through the work of Maura Haberman, who works in the rec department, fundraising. Usually we had enough fundraising to cover the fireworks themselves, and everything else we had to cover. And so that could be a good goal here again, whether or not the same entities that donated before are able or willing to do it now, could still be a goal that we look at. So yes, I think I have some direction, and yes, I think I will maybe bring it back on the 5th to see what you think of it further.
Okay, thank you.
Just a point of order, if we don't need my motion, I can withdraw it. If you would like
please,
to do that.
Please do, yeah.
I withdraw my motion, and I think Jim has to withdraw his, or him has to withdraw.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're now right on time on the discussion of the cable television license renewal at Comcast of Massachusetts. And I note that Cable Advisory Committee is present either in person or virtually to lead this discussion.
Yep, that's correct. Hello. Thank you for having us over. So my name is Oleg Volinsky. I live on 8 Durkee Road. I'm a member of Cable Advisory Committee. I want to also recognize there are several other members of Advisory Committee online. I heard Terrence Lobo, Richard Logan, and maybe others. Also online, Special Town Counsel for Cable Affairs, Bill Solomon, and also Catherine Maloney, who is Senior Manager for Government Affairs from Comcast. So today, Cable Advisory Committee wants to present to you cable television license renewal for Comcast and INET agreement as well. Next slide. So just to kind of give you context, so Acton and like many other towns have agreement with cable grants licenses to cable providers. Acton has grant license to Comcast and Verizon. So this license current license has expired about 2 years ago on June 20th, 2020. And it was kind of extended through procedurally, partly due to COVID and partly due to additional negotiations around INET, which I'll cover later. Can we go back? So key points of the license are, it's a 10-year license, and it starts targeting to December 1st, 2022, and through midnight, November 30th, 2032, and it's basically kind of a 10-year term. And yep, okay, let's go to the next slide. So key points about the license. Largely, in very large terms, the license stays the same. It's a 10-year term. There are key provisions around existing drops to all the public buildings, schools, town facilities, police station, fire station, things like that. And there's also one basic cable drop to all the facilities as well. The big change with this license over the previous one is there's no longer provisions for INET or EMARP. Let's see, next slide. So kind of a comment about what this license does give us is there are provisions for 3 standard definition PAC channels. So Comcast is responsible to provide three PAC standard channels, as well as 1 high definition channel for public broadcasting. We also negotiated upgrading of these channels from standard definition to what would be like better quality standard definition with SD, SDI technically, and this by license, this has to be accommodated within 30 months from the signing of the agreement. Next slide. Key points around this. So by granting this license, Comcast will be providing us with a capital for PEG needs. And this capital will be in the form of payment $256,000, and will be dispersed in 3 payments over 3 years in the form of $85,000+. Next slide. Additionally, the license. So the license includes 5% payment from gross annual revenue from cable pieces. So just to be clear, this license focuses on cable, so it includes only revenues coming from cable, so on-demand viewing and things like that. That includes a part of cable. It doesn't include revenues from internet, so that's to be clear, or phone. Also, there's provisions for 50 cents per subscriber per year. And payments will be provided to issuing authority or to a designatee. So in our case, we have MOU with ActonTV, who receives these payments. Next slide. So this is one of the big changes to the license. So as part of this agreement, we separated from the licensed institutional network, so INET. INET is a, for those who don't know, this is a key infrastructural piece in town. It's a fiber optical network that interconnects all the buildings within town, including facility like pumping station facilities, schools, a fire station, public safety building, and et cetera. Over years, this network was built as part of the kind of distribution of video from the library and receiving video from the meetings here or in schools. But over time, it's started being used as more like a network, communications network within town. Over time, Comcast is looking to get out of that business of providing this kind of networks. And as part of this discussion, we had several different discussions around how to handle it. So just to kind of, for context, in Acton, this represents 20 miles of fiber optical networking. Let me see, I'm just looking at my notes. As part of this, we looked at different options, and a decision was made in the consultation with Town IT and Mark Hall to pursue a lease option on the INET. So we looked at there was a potential buyout option, and the lease seemed to be the most effective way for us and to continue having INET available for the next 10 years. And over these next 10 years, we can evaluate our needs and how to proceed forward. But this gives us opportunity to do this. One point to make is that, and this has been probably, if not been raised already, it will be raised potentially by people, is why it was removed from the license. One of the reasons is that as of, I believe, August 2019, FCC had a ruling where cable licensee could be charged. So we as a town, just in the plain language, could be charged by Comcast for providing in-kind services such as INET. So basically they could say, hey, we're going to maintain this INET for you guys. We're going to charge you. And they could set the price on this. So this was a move to limit the risk and to have a predefined costs of this type of a service. Next slide. So the fact is, this institutional network will be leased to town at cost of $9,583, and this kind of over years has some additional increase in cost, and it's going to be up to $10,582. The payment is based on the size of the network and kind of a maintenance formula. So we identified what was the size of the overall network and negotiated the cost associated with the maintenance, and it's come up with a number together with between us and with support of IT, our town council, and work with Comcast on this result. Just to kind of go to the next, this is kind of the last one is just kind of directionally. Can we go on the next slide? So directionally, the fact is this is what we're seeing in the market. I don't think I will say anything totally new here. We see significant level of what they call cord cutting going on, and people moving towards primarily streaming services. As a result, what we're seeing is the revenues from cable providers are relatively flat to going down. So number of subscribers is slightly going down starting last year. And by the way, they are distributed across Verizon and Comcast, so there's factors there. But overall, we're seeing the reduction in terms of revenues coming in, and we believe that this trend will be continuing. So it will be important to figure out the best way to maintain viable municipal income and abilities to maintain PEG services such as what the ActonTV does provide. And, you know, I give them big kudos. They've been very effective in terms of getting out there, been visible, providing all kinds of valuable service to this town. So it's just, it's a great institution within the town, let's just say. And some of the members, actually, of previous members of committee helped to drive it, and we feel very strong that this is something that needs a lot of support by citizens of this town. This is it for my presentation, and I'm happy to address any comments or questions.
Thank you. Fran, I'll let you lead off. You're the liaison to the Cable Committee.
I'm learning every day. So, Oleg, if you can explain the difference between the INET and Comcast, the agreement, because it's my understanding, is it the INET agreement that can be, is it part of the lease agreement that it can be renegotiated or re-upped every 3 years? It's not the 10-year, or am I?
It is 10-year agreement. However, we put, there were several provisions, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So it's a 10-year agreement, but we negotiated provisions to update the network based on our needs.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, if there are situations where there are some, I would give it for argument's sake, where the part of network no longer being used for whatever reason, with building being removed, I think we every 3 years we can review this and adjust the size of the network, and based on that some costs associated to us. So that's but it's a 10-year agreement. There's also provisions about we have ability to extend it at our cost, this network, to other locations, and I'm pretty sure we have several places where we have extended it outside of what INET provides. So there are precedents for that, but we have some flexibility there in terms of how to manage this.
Thank
You
you.
comments from other members? Himja.
Hi, yes, I am also still learning. So a few questions.
Sure.
So one question I had, if you go back to one of the first slides, I think it said that the license expired, did I read it right, in 2020?
That's correct.
So I was wondering why that gap between 2020 and now when we're trying to renew it in 2022.
So we've been negotiating with Comcast for the last probably 4 years.
Oh.
So the process started significantly before that, but it was basically kind of because there were significant enough changes, as well as COVID happened, as well as kind of figuring out all the details. We finally kind of came to agreement that worked for both for town and Comcast. So it was kind of a combination of several things, but the process started probably about 4 years ago.
Oh, okay. And then in that meanwhile, have people been able to use Comcast, or was that service not available in town?
Well, I'm pretty sure they can. It's
okay.
So the way it works, that as actually we were kind of essentially lived under a previous contract. It was kind of there is a procedural term that I will probably incorrectly states, but it's something like denial, something provisional denial or something like that was extended over every 3 months for the last 2 years. And we lived under a previous contract, and in fact we wanted to get it done as soon as possible. I certainly would like to do that.
As soon as we can. Got you. And then related to INET and how it relates to everything, I was wondering if you could explain again why we are trying to move away from using INET. 'Cause
Sure.
or like how that works, yeah.
I'll brief history lesson. The INET was part of the original contract with, I believe, Cablevision 20 years ago. The reason it was built is because it was one of ingenious solution for issue of stolen set-top boxes. It's basically they were to provide cable to classrooms, to facilities. We wanted to have like set-top box at every room. So the idea was that we put 30 channels, make 30 channels available on this network and distribute them to all the facilities within town. So every classroom had a selection of 30 channels that were delivered from the library, facility in the basement of the library, to everywhere in town. The fact is the need for this kind of slowly dissipated just because all the town schools pretty much use online tools. So it's all streaming now. They don't really, I don't think the new school even has any cable to speak of. So the fact is that kind of a approach is no longer really needed. The other issue, and this is the piece called EMARB. The other issue is that maintenance of that facility with its 30 channels that being tuned to and distributed was becoming very difficult because equipment was 20 years old. Spares was almost impossible to find. Every time something was broken, it was very complicated. So both Cable Advisory Committee and Comcast felt it was time to move on away from that and no longer use it. But INET itself is an extremely valuable resource within town for communications network, and that's why we need to maintain this as part of the separate agreement.
And was that the line item, the $9,000 line item for the lease?
So $9,000 is what we as a town will be paying to Comcast to continue use this 20-mile long fiber network.
Oh, to continue to use, okay.
Yeah. It's a yearly fee we'll be paying. The cable fees and the Comcast support for PEG, for PEG capital, and as well as revenue-based capital, that will continue and that will go as a separate items that, as I said, distributed to ActonTV to support the PEG channels.
Got you. Thanks. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks for your questions.
David.
I just have a quick question for the town. Do we have plans to migrate off of INET to this use of public internet or VPNs, or how do we plan to do that?
We do use VPNs for remote work currently, but for augmenting the INET, we've extended the network ourselves to other facilities. We would tend to avoid the public internet just for security reasons. This is all private strands, dark fiber that we light up with our own equipment rather than using the public internet.
Yeah, so we wouldn't want to go to VPNs over the public internet for facility scale VPNs over the...
We certainly would not achieve the speeds, the data rate speeds that we have now, which are between 1 and 10 gigabits. VPNs, I don't think we would get near that. And there's a lot of other configuration set that we have to go through to implement VPN site to site as opposed to just having network switches.
Great, understood. Thank you.
Jim.
I wondered if the town had any hesitations about this particular contract we're being asked to approve tonight.
The license or the INET lease?
Well, either one.
The town has been working on this with Oleg and Comcast for a couple of years now, and we're quite comfortable.
Great. So just a couple of just educational questions for me. So we're among an increasingly small number of towns that actually have, two different providers that people can choose from, both Verizon and Comcast. And I I understand the benefit that gives our citizens, that they can, pick and choose, and so there's some competitive pressure to actually keep their prices a little bit less ridiculous than they usually are. And I wonder if there is any advantage to the town during the negotiation process. Is there anything about, that we have two different providers that we're working with that help our negotiating power?
It's an interesting question. It's maybe somewhat complex because yes, it helps and I think it delivers better service because of the fact of competition. At the same time, each provider has its own approaches and needs, and some the Comcast is more kind of a classic cable operator. Verizon was new one. Technology somewhat different. In terms of negotiations, I'm not sure if it makes a lot of advantage in a sense. It's kind of they have their own, I would say, for the lack of better flavor. And there's also factors that subscriber-based is split now across too, so they see it as sort of instead of one monolith, they see it as two separate groups. So it's an interesting question, but I'm not sure if I answered it totally. But it has its own flavors, but it has advantages in some way, disadvantages maybe in the others.
What's the Verizon contract schedule? Are you already working on that one? Or?
So Verizon contract also expired. We in the process of negotiating it, and we are looking to bring it in front of you guys not long from now. But it's in a kind of towards final stages as well, negotiations as well. And in fact, delays were somewhat similar. One point to make is Verizon did not have iNet components.
Right.
So it's kind of there's some historical facts here, but they're pretty much straightforward license renewal kind of a process.
Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you. Other comments? Comments from the public? Yeah. Matt, I think Bill Solomon, I think, is the first person that wanted to speak, and he's counsel.
You should be able to speak now.
Let's see. Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me here. Bill Sullivan, Special Cable Counsel. I've worked with the town on a number of license renewals going back to Cablevision, the original Verizon license, this renewal. I just wanted some overview points just so people have a better sense of what was involved with your committee and your IT department. I would say this was the most complex cable license renewal I've been involved with, and I do many cable license renewals across the Commonwealth, and its complexity arises from the town's IT department and its committed cable advisory committee that's worked hard for many years. The former system that was discussed about providing cable service to school buildings named EMAR by the originator and the town was a one-of-a-kind system in the Commonwealth, to my knowledge, in terms of its scale and even combined with the type. The institutional network is as or more advanced, than any institutional network in the Commonwealth. There are others that are advanced, but no more so than Acton. And Acton uses it as your IT directors stated for a multitude of uses. The INET agreement, as discussed, actually works well for both parties. It works for the town. It works for Comcast. The alternative would have been a more major dispute, maybe that would have risen in level. And so it allowed for surety on the path forward by knowing that iNet would be there for 10 years and hopefully thereafter at a reasonable cost. And that's something that Comcast didn't have to do, but they understood for the last 2 years that towns that have institutional networks depend on them as their lifeblood. And so Comcast, very much through the work of Kathy Maloney, who's here today, the government affairs representative, and the director she works with, came to the table and negotiated the terms of that iNet agreement. And what probably took more time than anything else was the question of, well, what if something happens that's major to that iNet going forward? How do you make that determination? And so that a decision to be made about what to do go from that point on. And Acton, through the cooperation again of Comcast, has the fairest and best language with respect to unanticipated engineering challenges that could arise going forward. So that this license and the iNet agreement reflect a tremendous IT department, a very, very dedicated cable advisory committee, particularly through its chair, Oleg Walensky. And to be fair and straightforward, the cooperation of Comcast. The final point I'll make is that I often say that if a town asks Google or Facebook or Apple to come to town hall and negotiate for years at the table at the town hall, and then during COVID, oftentimes, obviously through video conferencing, you'd be waiting a long time. But Comcast, while a multi-billion-dollar company, arose from a smaller cable company, and they understand the importance to them and to negotiations and to serving their customers of localism, having someone on the ground who knows where the various video return locations are and understands the strength of the access program, which is mentioned is very strong in Acton. So it's through that effort of all parties that these two agreements were achieved. And as to the iNet use agreement, I consider it to be the best iNet use agreement in the Commonwealth, and that reflects what your town employees and volunteers said was needed and followed through on together with Comcast. So thank you.
Thank you. Matt, do we have other speakers?
We have one other hand, Mr. Chair. Would you like to call on them?
Yes, please.
I believe this is Tara from earlier. Tara, you should be able to speak.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So thank you for the background relative to the case. It seems that several municipalities are challenging that case, that ruling. And so I think it's unfortunate that we would find out about this case at the hearing as opposed to, I had been writing and asking why the iNet agreement was separate, because it seemed very odd given that this was, I thought it was a given, it was a requirement by federal law to provide the iNet at no cost as part of every other license in the past. I realize that the person from Comcast might be a nice person, that they would like to stop providing it, but that I don't think is our problem. I feel like if you're going to, I would like to know how much this iNet would cost to operate it with some other provider, because if one of the main reasons why the iNet was free is so that the town would not provide any commercial services like internet for the public in competition with the cable provider. So for $10,000 a year, it might be better to just sell cable services or internet services. So that's one set of questions. I have questions about the senior discount. I feel like requiring seniors to provide very sensitive information, passports, et cetera, just to get the senior discount. I thought that the senior discount was for all seniors. I didn't realize that. I hope that you aren't giving up the very vulnerable seniors that don't want to give their passports and other private information to Comcast, who has a terrible record of privacy violations and reserves the right to sell the data and share it with their third-party affiliates without any option for the user to opt out. So they have to trade effectively their ability to watch local TV with the desire to keep their very sensitive private information, including mother's maiden name, all that you need to get into a bank account effectively. Then there's a whole section on tree trimming, which appears to allow Comcast, if this is approved, to cut down trees, any trees, significant limbs on public shade trees, which are town property. And so it's not clear to me whether, because it says that the licensee shall have the authority to trim trees, but then it says in accordance with town bylaws and regulations. So I would hope that the town would ensure that the Comcast does not go cutting large limbs just because they happen to be next to any of their cables. I feel like that's a violation of the public shade tree law. And it would be a great detriment to the value of property and with the town's the health that we gain from trees. And so I would like very much to get answers to these questions. It seems that a lot of the discussion over the period of time has been with technical people, and this is the first I've seen this draft license, and I feel like I hope you continue this so that the public can have a chance to actually look at this and look at this law that supposedly, this case, that is suggesting that Comcast can charge for this, where it's always been free and was an ante to even get into the game to get the right-of-way rights of the utility. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Let me try to address it in reverse order. So number one is tree trimming. This provision is the same word to word to the previous license. So there was no change here with regard to previous provisions. So we're not, as far as I know, there hasn't been issues related to Comcast going and randomly cutting trees and things like that. So unless there's, and my understanding is that based on the provisions, Comcast has to come to the town and get approval from town to do any tree trimmings. And so things like that. This senior discount, it's also, basically language is the same as previous license, and the provision is a previous license. I am not aware of other options of proof of age that exist, and maybe something we can consider in the future and address in more kind of beyond what's available right now. But this is kind of the provision that we didn't get comment before on this. Just to be clear, and this has been discussed as part of the Cable Advisory Committee meetings for the last 4 years. The different drafts of license been reviewed during the meetings. So, we try to do our best to get comments from different stakeholders and including town. So, that's all I can say really about that. In terms of YINET, lease versus other options, we've worked with town IT pretty diligently. Mark Hall had been heavily involved in this. We looked at different options that were available, replacement, buyout, and this seems to be a most economical option. Frankly, it gives us, the way I look at it personally is that it leaves us 10 years to decide what to do next kind of thing, whether what our purchase to do at what we considered a quite reasonable price given the size of and scope of the network that we are using. So that's kind of a hope this addressed Tara's questions.
Thank you. Matt, do we have anyone else online?
There are no additional speakers, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Fran, considering you've been doing the heavy lifting on this, Would you like to read the motion?
Yes, it
Speaker.
has to be in two parts with the institutional network first.
So I move to approve the institutional network fiber use agreement by and between Town of Acton, Comcast of Massachusetts 3,1, and cable television renewal license to Comcast of Massachusetts 3 Incorporated. License renewal term December 1, 2022 to November 30th, 2032. Recognition and acknowledgement of 2 Comcast side letters. 1, the PEG Interactive Program Guide, and 2, the Senior Citizen Discount Letter. I'm reading the date, today's date. Institutional Network Fiber Use Agreement. I hereby move that the board, in conjunction with its role as cable television license issuing authority, vote as follows. To enter into the subject institutional network fiber use agreement between the Town of Acton and Comcast of Massachusetts 3 Incorporated as presented by the Cable Television Advisory Committee.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, moved and seconded. Comments from the board? Jim?
Just wanted to thank the Cable Committee for slogging through this for the last 3, 4, and, all the years before that as well. Thank you.
Very much appreciated.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no further questions, let's take a vote. All in favor of the motions, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passed unanimously. Once again, thank you to the cable TV folks.
Do we need this? Do we need a second?
Okay.
Sorry. Issuing authority vote as follows: to grant the subject cable television renewal license with a license renewal term of December 1st, 2022 to November 31st, 2032 to Comcast of Massachusetts 2 Incorporated Cable Comcast, as presented by the Cable Television Advisory Committee. All terms and conditions contained in the renewal license have been agreed to by Comcast. Comcast, by and through its authorized representative, shall execute this renewal license agreement as set out on the signature page of the renewal license. Number 2, to recognize and acknowledge the following 2 side letters. Oh, okay, that's just the letters and
I'll second the motion.
Okay, moved and seconded. Questions from the board? John?
I don't have any specific comments or questions about the license. I appreciate the work that went into this renewal process. I do have a concern, though, about this 10-year period and the PEG revenues that we used to support ActonTV over the last 5 years, just because of the industry. The revenue that we've been receiving and then giving to ActonTV has gone down each year, and I don't expect that trend to change. So I think it's something that the board and ActonTV needs to start thinking about, is how do we plan for that eventual need for additional support, and where would that come from? So that, I just wanted to make sure that people are aware that that revenue source is going in the wrong direction as the services demands aren't changing. So thanks.
Thank you. All right. Moved and seconded.
So should I read the second little part, I think? Yeah.
Might as well.
Yeah.
Sure,
To recognize and acknowledge, number 2, to recognize and acknowledge the following 2 side letters from Comcast, signed by Comcast's Senior Manager of Government and Regulatory Affairs, Catherine Maloney, and dated December 1st, 2022. The PEG Interactive Program Guide and the Senior Citizen Discount Letter.
I'll second the second reading.
Okay. Thank you very much. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It's again unanimous. Thank you very much.
Can I say a word?
Certainly.
I'd like to thank the select board for the help, and I want to thank actually Fran and John Banson for supporting us over years. Also, I'd like to thank CAC, Cable Advisory Committee members, Town IT, Mark Hald and Matt Frost, because they helped through this process. Brendan Hearn from Acton Boxborough High School, or Acton Boxborough Schools, and Bill Solomon for supporting us in the contract negotiations, and Catherine Maloney and the Comcast team to being negotiators in good faith. So I appreciate everybody's help. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 6, acting as sewer commissioners. Mr. Manager.
So before the sewer commission tonight are requests to approve 2 sewer connections to 2 projects that involve affordable housing. I will go through. The first one is McManus Manor, which is the Acton Housing Authority project that the community and the Housing Authority have been working on. We are optimistic that it will get funding from the state to do to start the project within the next year or so. The town recently received a MassWorks grant that would fully fund the cost of the sewer connection from its existing end on the other side of Route 2 to where it needs to go over in front of this property, where right now is near where Kennedy Landscaping is. That's where it's the future home of 41 units of senior affordable housing that will be owned and managed by the Housing Authority. And so the board, acting as sewer commissioners, or maybe acting as a board, I can't remember, approved us applying for the MassWorks grant earlier this year, and I'm pleased to report that we were successful in getting it. And so before the Housing Authority can continue with its planning for site construction and site development, it needs to have certainty that the sewer connection that is needed is secured. And so the sewer commission is tonight being asked to consider a vote to that effect. There was a memo in the packet from the town engineer with some of the details of the specific unit counts and flows, which I can go through if there's any questions, or otherwise any questions.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Public comments? In that case, I would entertain a motion to approve the sewer connection to McManus Manor at 362 Main Street.
So moved.
I can get a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? Jim?
These 2 sewer connections have me quite torn wearing my sewer commissioner hat, which I'm not sure exactly what a sewer commissioner hat looks like, but it's there somewhere. This first one, I can't stand the thought of voting against it because we've gone down such a long road with the Acton Housing Authority and getting this project built. So I'll either vote for it or abstain. The second one, not so much, and I can speak to it then. And they're both about the concern of that we only have a limited capacity left for infiltration into the ground. We're in the middle of figuring out how to expand that with a new rib, which we've heard now, after some investigation, will give us perhaps an extra 50,000 gallons per day, which is not enough. It's not enough to deal with the current, with the customers who have already paid betterment fees and haven't connected yet. And the step beyond that, additional ribs, it's a very expensive operation, and the more people we take on onto the sewer system, the larger and more expensive that process is going to be. So I'm very hesitant to add sewer customers who are not already in the district. Thanks.
Thank you. John?
Sure, I can address that comment generally with something that, we've been really looking at the capacity issues that we've been talking about over the last few years. And I think something that's become clear to me that maybe wasn't clear to me before is that when this system was constructed approximately 20 years ago, it was not constructed with the discharge capacity necessary to meet the needs of the entire district. And the idea would be that as the district gets built out, the discharge capacity would be increased. So this is something that has been anticipated being a need when this whole thing started, and we're getting closer to the point where we really need to do it. And work is underway now, as mentioned, to investigate feasibility of increasing the discharge capacity on the Adams Street site. And there is a need to look further for other ways as it becomes necessary to increase discharge capacity further. So I think that's a decision that has already been made and we're working on it. And it's something that's going to have to continue, because even if the board didn't approve these two projects, which I'm not suggesting, there's still not enough capacity remaining to treat the entire district, and there never was. The entire district was never going to be able to be treated there until we increased discharge capacity. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. And also there was, I believe, a motion, and I just wanted to offer that it'd be helpful to also discuss the fee in many cases, and most affordable housing connections like this. At least recently, the fees have been waived, and so I just wanted to make sure that was on the record too, if the board decides to move forward with this one.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, I'd like to just make 2 points on the capacity. One is we've had about 70,000 gallons a day capacity left for a long time. It goes down very slowly. Now, of course, we could, have a big project like Powder Mill Place, and a big chunk of that will go. But in the same vein, if we add 50 to 70,000 gallons a day with a new rib, that's significant. We have lived, let's just say for the sake of argument, it's 70,000 gallons. We've lived with that amount left for many years now, right? And it hasn't gone away, right? So it lasts a long time, because people in the original district hook up really slowly. So, individual houses hook up really slowly. When we have a housing project like this one that we're discussing now, McManus, those units are likely to be rented within months of the facility opening, and so those will add pretty quickly. But single-family houses come very slowly.
As far as the fee for McManus Manor, is it customary that we do waive a hookup fee for affordable housing, like a project like this for the aged? Yeah.
I would like to offer a friendly amendment that we not charge a privilege fee.
Thank you. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay. From the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alyssa Nickel, South Acton. These decisions before you tonight call attention to issues relevant to the town's financial well-being and of particular concern for anyone who is a current sewer ratepayer or who has paid a betterment but is not yet hooked up. An affirmative vote for these two projects will add 117 units to the sewer district. According to the town engineer, there are 280 parcels, representing about 1/3 of the parcels in the existing sewer district that are not yet connected to the sewer. I also want to point out that Toll Brothers recently came to the Acton Community Housing Corporation with a proposal for 320-unit apartment complex on Parker Street. These parcels, whose owners have already paid a sewer betterment, the ones in the district, not the proposed project, will be required to connect to the municipal sewer when their septic systems eventually reach their end of life. Every engineering memo to the sewer commissioners regarding the addition of even one unit to the district has included the statement, reserve capacity for these remaining parcels within the district should be considered. The town has an obligation to provide access to the municipal sewer for all these parcels. Mr. Snyder Grant noted at the April 4th Sewer Commissioners meeting, what we saw in the recent Sewer Commissioners presentation is that adding an extra on-site rapid infiltration basin, or RIB, would probably be just enough to serve those that we are required to provide connections to. An additional RIB, if feasible, will provide additional discharge capacity, but the feasibility study, design, and construction of the RIB costs money. Who pays that cost? Existing ratepayers and taxpayers at large when grant monies are used, such as the $500,000 in ARPA funding. An additional source of funding for the operation of the wastewater treatment plant that should include repairs and upgrades is privilege fees. Privilege fees the sewer commissioners are now considering waiving. A vote to approve waiving the privilege fees for these two projects is a vote to forego $1.846 million that could help fund the rehabilitation project, originally estimated at $6.2 million last year when town meeting approved the project, but now has a higher projected cost. I learned earlier this year that the Acton Water District does not waive demand or mitigation fees for affordable units, including new construction undertaken by the Acton Housing Authority. They operate with a clear understanding of the costs to provide water to users and their duty to the water ratepayers. A MassWorks grant awarded to the town will fund the $2.3 million sewer extension to McManus Manor. The source of this grant money is, once again, taxpayers at large. Taxpayers are footing the bill for the construction of a very expensive sewer extension across Route 2, even though a functional septic system was designed and redesigned to alleviate the Dog Park Committee's concerns about the impact to that project. A system with a $471,486 price tag, or 20% of the cost of the sewer extension. In other words, you are choosing a wastewater alternative that costs 5 times more. Additionally, the Acton Housing Authority will be paying an annual sewer rate that is 5 times that of a septic, $20,000 versus $4,000. They may be saving in the short term due to the avoidance of the 30-year mortgage to pay for the septic because the grant is funding the cost. The life of the building, which we should expect to be at least twice the length of the mortgage term, the cost of paying the sewer fee will be much greater. Properly designed and maintained modern septic systems can have an operational life of 60 to 70 years. In my opinion, this is a clear example of wasteful government spending. Finally, I want to point out the irony that on March 21st, at the meeting of the Select Board, directly preceding the Sewer Commissioners' vote to add the Parker Street units to the sewer district, you agreed upon the following public comment regarding the draft guidelines for the multifamily zoning for MBTA communities. The town of Acton has a limited sewer district, which extends within a portion of the MBTA half-mile radius. The town requests that constraints due to sewer capacity of the existing system in accommodating the unit capacity not prohibit the town from compliance. In fact, this letter was posted in the April 4th meeting packet at which the sewer commissioners voted to add the Parker Street apartment complex to the sewer district. According to the approved minutes, Mr. Martin noted the important benefit of this arrangement is adding units to the subsidized housing inventory. Mr. Charter said the board should approve this arrangement that would help preserve affordability of housing. Ms. Arsenal asked what would be the restriction putting the units on the subsidized housing inventory. And Mr. Snyder Grant, the sole dissenting vote, is in favor of the general idea of creating additional affordable housing without having to construct new units. Mr. Martin further noted that the Parker Street apartments represented between 1/10 and 1/5 of the remaining discharge capacity, when in fact the town engineer estimates the flow at 11,000 gallons per day. The remaining discharge capacity, minus the powder mill place and Taurier place, is 20,000 gallons per day, representing 54% of the remaining discharge capacity. Mr. Snyder Grant suggested waiting to vote until data was available on the additional capacity that might be provided with the inflow and infiltration work to be funded by the applicant. Waiting for this data, as well as an accurate anticipated flow to be provided by the town engineer, would have been prudent. I urge you to carefully consider it now. As sewer commissioners, your sole responsibility is to the ratepayers in the district and the sound financial management of the Sewer Enterprise Fund. Affordable housing initiatives, while they are absolutely inherent to your select board duties, should have no bearing whatsoever on a sewer commission discussion and decision. The town does not yet have a clear engineering or funding pathway to address the issue of future insufficient capacity and current treatment plant rehabilitation needs. The expected costs are higher. The expected funding from Powder Mill Place is not assured. This is not the time to vote to waive fees or increase demand. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt, do we have anyone online?
We have one hand, Mr. Chair. I believe it's Tara from earlier. They should be able to unmute themselves.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I agree with what Alyssa says. Very well thought out and very well researched. Thank you, Alyssa. I want to remind folks that may not have been around very long that there was no decision to expand the sewers or the ribs. Any vote, if you remember the acceptance of the Comprehensive Water Resources Plan, the CWRMP, there was a motion on the floor, by the floor, I think it might have been myself, that the acceptance was contingent upon any additional infrastructure costs or expansion had to be approved by town meeting. It's not something the select board can do as sewer commissioners. The acceptance of that plan, when the proponents brought the plan to town meeting, they swore in their presentation that there would be no expansion without bringing it back to a town meeting. So design of ribs, all of that stuff is not supposed to be done. Any of those plans are supposed to go to town meeting. So the idea of saying that the decision to expand had already been made, I ask you where exactly? Perhaps in the closed rooms at town hall, but certainly not in public and certainly not at town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's proceed with the vote on McManus Manor connection at 362 Main Street. And we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I'll abstain as well.
It passes with a majority of 3. Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Thank you. So the next project for the sewer commissioners to consider is 68 Parker Street. This is a project that, as was just mentioned, there was a presentation and a decision made by the board in April of this year, and the board had asked me to work on a memorandum of agreement with the property owner of 68 Parker Street that outlines how a reinvestment in the existing housing stock to achieve affordability goals would be accomplished in a way that and how that's impacted by the sewer privilege fee. So just a rehash or a regroup of what this project is, it's 76 apartments that are existing. They are known as, or they're considered to be naturally affordable because of their age and just the way that the market is. And the property owner came to us and said, I'd like to request a sewer connection because rather than replacing the treatment plant that they have or the treatment system that they have, and as part of that, they agreed to maintain affordability of all of the units for 10 years, and they agreed to keep them restricted for 10 years. And in addition to that, they would agree to get 10% of the units formally certified as subsidized housing inventory affordable units, which helps us as a community who keeps track of SHI units. And that's a 30-year restriction in exchange for those affordability restrictions and some public infrastructure that would be created as part of the sewer connection. A calculated fee that accounts for those credits would go to $260,000, which is what's in the MOA that's been drafted and before you, which was just completed tonight, but that will be in the extra information version of the packet. The MOA outlines how the units will be maintained as affordable and restricted as such. It outlines that up to $300,000 in infrastructure will be credited because it will be used by the public after the construction. And let's see what else is in here. Just a breakdown on the units. There are 8 apartment units that will be added to our subsidized housing inventory, 5 one-bedrooms and 3 two-bedrooms. And the other ones will be maintained at 60% of AMI for 10 years. The project, this was an interesting project. The Acton Community Housing Corporation did look at this project, and there's a letter that was in your packet in the April meeting with their recommendation related to this effort. But it's interesting because I'm working with a group based on a town meeting vote this past year, a citizen petition actually, to do a study on how to do more rehabilitation of housing to create affordable units. And this project is actually doing that. I thought it was an interesting opportunity to bring forward for the board to consider. I believe that the applicant may be here if there are questions. Yes, they are. And I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you. Comments from the board? David.
So 2 things. Since we last discussed this, I met with Bob Van Meter, and he understood the proposal quite well and thought that the non-SHI units were still, it was still quite a benefit to the town to waive 50% of the privilege for those units. There were some comments too that we, shouldn't be waiving privilege. We have, way before the members on this board, the sewer commissioners have traditionally waived privilege for affordable housing. And the numbers in this particular proposal are to waive, to waive the privilege on the SHI units, 100%, to waive privilege on the non-SHI units, 50%, and then subtract from that amount any infrastructure built, which would be given to the town as part of the sewer district. So it's in rough terms, the privilege on the non-SHI units would be 1.12 million. Half of that would be 560 or so million. And the estimate right now on the infrastructure that would be given to the town and potentially reusable is about $300,000. So that leaves about $262,000. I also, I'm happy to take questions from the board about that, but I also have, Mr. Chair, I have 2 questions for the town manager, if I could certainly just ask those. Is this agreement, if the SHI units could not be certified, I assume we come back to the drawing board, right? This, I mean, I think that's the way it should be, right? If the SHI units can't be certified, we should come back and agree on something else.
Yes, so part of the language here is that the town shall provide the necessary sewer disposal for the property, provided that several things happen, including and the affordability conditions laid out in Section 2 of this agreement are met. And those affordability conditions are that 8 units become SHI certified and the other remaining ones remain restricted for 10 years.
And thank you. And my second question, we're for the infrastructure donated to town worth at or around $300,000. Will that number, the number used will be the actual value? I mean, we could sign the MOU ahead of time, but the amount subtracted from privilege will be the value agreed by the town engineer, that of the infrastructure donated to the town.
Yeah, the way it's presented here, it's a set amount, but that set amount was meant to represent what amount of the infrastructure is a public benefit. Until we do further engineering, we're not going to have an exact amount, and 300 is what we sort of agreed tentatively as that number. So I guess to answer your question, the MOA is being presented with that number, and if it changed, we could come back with a different number.
Thank you. Comments from other members? Jim.
Yeah, I think we should have a plan that we've agreed on for funding and doing the expansion of the ability of the sewer system to absorb more waste before we add all these users. Because we have no idea how much we're going to be on the hook for adding extra ribs beyond the one that's currently under development. The other comment I have is that it seems like I agree that the benefit to the town in terms of affordable housing is correctly reflected in the reduction in fees. But I'd still rather have that be paid for by, a source of funds that is for affordable housing, rather than taking the money out of taking that potential income away from our sewer enterprise fund. Thanks.
Thank you. Public comment? Okay. Would somebody be willing to submit a motion?
I move to approve the connection of the Parker Street apartments at 68 Parker Street to the sewer system for a privilege fee of around $262,000, depending on the amount of infrastructure donated to the town as part of that project.
Thank you. Are you going to cite the memorandum in that motion as well?
Well, that's probably a good idea. As per the draft MOU that's in our packet today.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Further discussion? If not, we'll take it to a vote. All in favor of the motion under consideration, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Abstention? Motion passes. Thank you. Mr. Manager, item 8, discuss update on MassDOT infrastructure and road safety work in Acton.
Yes, thank you. We have been meeting with officials from MassDOT regarding safety concerns at Great Road. There have been 3 very serious tragic accidents that occurred involving vehicles on Great Road in the last month. And so just a few things that have happened since. We met there on the 31st of October, and then we met again a few weeks later with MassDOT. They've been very responsive to some of the things that we've been looking for assistance with, since it is a state road. What they have done so far is they've replaced a lot of the signage that was up the corridor. Some of the older signage that isn't as reflective, they've replaced it with new reflective signage. They repainted all the lines on the crosswalks, and I believe all the other lines too, the yellow and the white ones. They looked at speed limits throughout Great Road from the Littleton line to the Concord line, and generally they didn't find anything that was incorrect based on the way people drive on those roads. However, they did note that one sign as you come from Littleton was incorrectly posted at 45, and that's going to be replaced with a 40 sign if it hasn't already. They also put out radar feedback signs, 4 of them, in multiple locations throughout Great Road, and they committed to keep those out there as long as they can. And the only reason they'll have to take them in is if snowbanks get in the way. They like to move them every once in a while so people don't get too familiar with where they are, and it has the impact of kind of getting people to slow down even more than they already have been. And then in the longer term, I think we've made a lot of progress. Because we had just completed a study of Great Road and complete streets improvements that we could put on that road, we had that to bring to them and said, listen, these are the things that we identified. You know, there was an idea for a shared use path on the north side, I guess, and then just a regular sidewalk on the south side. And all of the intersections that were created, very car-centric intersections, like you think of Davis Road, it's like the size of this room of pavement for just an in and out. And so things like that, really tightening those intersections in to make them much safer for pedestrians. The same thing with Strawberry Hill and a few of the other intersections along Great Road. They saw those as things that they could potentially jump on in the near term. And by near term, I mean a few years. Whereas maybe doing the whole corridor over would be much bigger and more involved and much longer term project. They committed to helping us doing some of those intersections in the next few years to increase the level of safety for people that are traveling on that corridor. And of course, they've already committed to installing that Hawk system at the Brook Street crossing. And we asked them to consider more, and they haven't said yes or no to that, but we are doing a study. So we completed the Great Road study, and it was from Concord line to 27, and so we just started another study to take it the rest of the way from 27 to the Littleton line, and we'll have the same recommendations for that stretch. That, you know, similar recommendations that came out of that will come to that, and we'll take that and we'll give it to the state and say, listen, can you help us with these? And we hope that we'll have similar success in getting them to start working on things. But just generally, you know, traffic enforcement, we've increased. The state police have also done some enforcement there lately, and, you know, we just encourage people to slow down. Be a pace car. If you're driving on Great Road, be a pace car. Make sure you're driving slow, because then everyone behind you has to drive slow, and it helps. And if you see people, slow down. And those are some of the general things that are happening on Great Road specifically. And of course, we are also doing all kinds of other road work and safety improvements throughout the community in other areas as well.
Thank you. Comments from the board? David?
So I have 2 questions. John, you said in addition to the Hawk system, you said something like other things. Are you talking about the rectangular rapid flashing beacons at more of the crosswalks? And if so, where does that stand?
So that's part of the work that they're analyzing. They haven't said we're going to put one here in any specific place, but they're going to look more at those recommendations and try to determine which one makes sense. The only one that's a go right now is the Hawk system at Brook Street.
And may I ask one more question? it sounds like for our complete streets and safety improvements that the town has been working on for Great Road, that we would, if I understood your points correctly, we'll present them to the state, anything that they would pick up, that's wonderful. And then we would still move forward with the remainder, except we wouldn't have to do certain things, like if they redo the Davis Road intersection, we wouldn't have to do that part.
Yes, so generally, as it's being a state road, we would really coordinate with them for any major improvements. We have, in the last few years, we did pave a large section leading to 27 from the new rail trail overpass. That was something that we did with town funds, and we just got their permission. So we can continue to do things like that. But generally, it's better, faster, and less costly to us locally if the state will do it. And so we're going to continue on that path. Similar to Kelly's Corner, although that took decades, I think this is a different situation, and I think we could move towards some corridor improvements there in a shorter time frame than Kelly's Corner.
Thank you. Jim.
Thanks for doing all this, and I'm just really pleased at the way that, the state's moved forward at a pace that's unfamiliar to me. One of the things that keeps standing out for me is the sort of the backwards way that speed limits are set or reset. We set the speed limit. The state sets speed limits based on studying how fast cars go, which is, we want to have the speed limit slower so it's safer. And I recognize that's not currently the way the state operates. But I do wonder, are there things that we can do as a town? Is there a time when the state would be willing to remeasure the average speed on the road? And if so, what can we do in the meantime? You've suggested one thing, which is, encouraging everyone to drive at what is clearly a safe speed on Great Road, and that will reduce speeds. I wonder about other approaches too, such as marking the crosswalks with, orange cones, whether there's the right to put up any particular kind of signage that would slow people down, maybe a public art project, indicating that, the streets belong to us, not to the cars. So any ideas like that, I'd love to hear about them and support them. Anything we can do to slow the average speed down before the state remeasures it. Thanks.
Thank you. Public comment.
Madeline Cruz, 3 Sashram Way. You're saying the state said that they didn't find anything out of the ordinary except for what they did, and I fail to understand that as a person who drives every single morning that my boyfriend works at Life Care Centers of Acton. I have people cutting me off, tailgating me. It makes me wonder if the fact that a 13-year-old boy in our town was the victim of a hit and run, and we still don't have clear answers on that. I simply beg to differ that the state is doing the best. They need to do better. We need to do better. I was driving today to go pick up my boyfriend at Life Care Centers of Acton, and sure enough, I had a car in front of me that I noticed put their blinker lights on to turn left onto Colonial Liquor thing right there. And I was slowing down and I stopped. I didn't just go over him because why? I'm not in a rush. And then this person driving behind me felt the need that they could just pass by me even though the car still hadn't turned. And I'm like, are you serious? Is it not enough that a child was in critical? Basically, he's a miracle. Doctors have him as a miracle, and I'm so happy that he's doing much better. But that means that we in turn have to do much better. I echo what Jim said, either putting cones up or the buckets on poles with flags like they do in other towns, because it's only a matter of time before something like this happens again. They are not doing enough. We have to require the state to do enough. I also am very detail-oriented, and I've been curious as to when you get into Littleton, there's a 50-mile sign, and then it goes down to 45, and then 40, and then 35. And the entire section where it says 35, where the businesses start, there's a lot of businesses on that road before the lights, and it goes down to 25. I don't understand why the state of Massachusetts can't do the same. As we all know, Great Road is a road where there is a lot of rental properties, and the diversity there is huge. They got to do better, and we have, I'm asking you guys to please advocate for people like me who are renters who live on this dangerous road. It's clearly known as a dangerous road, and we should be requiring the state and pushing the state to lower the speed down to either 30 or 35. It would be a lot better than 40, because people just simply are not caring enough. I saw state troopers out there only one day. I would like to see more state troopers out there. So we have to do something better than what was already done, because it simply isn't enough. Sorry, and thank you.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, I just, thank you for the comments. I just wanted to mention, I did ask, the things that you see sometimes in crosswalks that are semi-permanent, and if you hit them, they'll flap over and then they'll flap back. I asked about those on Great Road, and they said they don't allow those on what they consider to be a major, they call it a highway, which I guess that's how it's classified. So they're not allowed on those type of roads, but we certainly could keep asking. They said that sometimes they become dangerous when they're hit. If someone hits them, then they become a projectile, and there's reasons that they didn't want to do it, but I think if we had ideas like that and we wanted to keep pushing, maybe in a specific instance or in a specific place, they may allow it on a trial basis.
Thank you.
Thanks. Alyssa Nickel, South Acton. So obviously I expressed some frustration with my local government, but it's way higher for the state government. It's frustrating to learn that, in a speedy manner means years from now or even decades. I just want to mention that I've been doing some research, and I know that our focus a lot of times is on speed. We got to get the cars to slow down. Speed is a factor in only 1/3 of crashes. It's crossing at night, it's impaired driving, which I think means not just under the influence, but also distracted driving. That also impairs your driving. I sent an email to the board yesterday, but I wanted to comment tonight just so I can encourage other residents. I see there's only like 13 people listening, but I want to encourage other residents to share their own ideas and offer support for the needed spending that it's going to take to implement these improvement measures. I believe that there are a lot of really low-cost solutions that should be implemented as soon as possible while we wait for these more expensive infrastructure improvements that take time to design and permit and build. Crosswalk safety is a shared responsibility, not just between the drivers and the pedestrians, but the government and transportation and planning and police, that address and monitor vehicle and pedestrian and cycling traffic. I agree with the suggestion made at your last meeting to increase the number of speed monitoring devices. I have one on my way home on Piper Road. It's only there for a couple of weeks and then it disappears. Every speed limit sign that is equipped to hold one of those devices, I would love to see one 365 days a year, because they work. They make me slow down, and I'm that pace car usually. I also agree with the suggestion made at the last meeting to implement a safety zone, if that's something that we're legally allowed to do along Great Road, at least from Azalea or Pope Road to Davis Road. That's where so many businesses and residents are, and a lot of people walking. With the significant increase in density that Madeline just mentioned, that occurred when farmland along Great Road was replaced with all of these dozens and dozens of multifamily developments, it's only common sense that that speed limit be dropped from 40 to 35 or 30. So I just said speed is only 1/3 of crashes, but if it's rush hour, I'm going 30 miles an hour on Great Road. And if it's 30 miles an hour, everybody knows it's going to take longer, and hopefully they'll leave earlier. So many of our crosswalks in Acton are faded, some of them very badly, and they need to be repainted. That shouldn't cost a whole lot. Those weighted pedestrian signal signs that can be put in the middle of the road, they're on Route 62, so I don't understand why they can't be on Route 2A. So hopefully we can get the state to agree to do that on a trial basis. There's reflective markers or LED lights that can be embedded into the pavement along the edge of crosswalks that are oriented toward oncoming traffic. Reflective tape can be wrapped around the black crosswalk poles to make them more visible. There are all of these new technologies like spotlights that shine directly on the crosswalk that are either user activated or motion activated. There's a lot of these great, like Jim mentioned, public art paintings on the beginning of a crosswalk to tell people, stop, wait, wave, look both ways before you cross the street, to get pedestrians to take responsibility. Other more costly long-term solutions could also be considered, replacing our signs if they're the old sheeting material with the new prismatic, highly reflective signage. There are road safety messaging programs that we can have a road safety community day, which would allow us to teach people wear reflective gear. Somebody crossed Piper Road on my way to this meeting, and I did not see him until he was, I was 30 feet from him. But a couple of days ago, a couple was walking with headlamps. And I so appreciate people wearing reflective gear and lights, or even holding a cell phone with the flashlight on, because it allows me to see them. Even in the middle of the day, I came home at 2:30 today, and there was a bicyclist behind me wearing a yellow reflective vest. And it's really hard to see a bicycle when you're operating a car. So even in the middle of the day, wearing reflective gear can help. And hopefully the Transportation Advisory Committee can get on board with this, and the schools, so that we could create some educational programs for the community and for the school children in the school to help everybody develop a greater awareness of road safety issues. Thanks.
Thank you. David.
So I think one of the things about 2A and Acton as opposed to other communities is, since we have many apartments along Route 2A, Great Road is essentially a neighborhood. In other communities, if you just take Route 2A either in or out, there's certainly shopping, but there's many fewer people living there, and I think that has to be a consideration for the state in their helping us decide what can be done. I think that both Ms. Cruz and Ms. Niggle talked about a couple of things, and they are related to the things that I think are very important for safety here. I think eventually narrowing the car roadway to be able to have a marked bicycle path, the narrower roadway will naturally slow down people. And the integrating crosswalks into that space. Right now the crosswalks are very wide, because the street's pretty wide, and so it takes a while to cross. There's no there's no islands or anything in the middle for any protection, right? So you have to walk the whole distance. and, your only protection is standing on the double yellow line in the middle, which is not much. If there are things that, I would like to see us do some things in parallel with waiting for, the state to help us with intersections. If we can put in bike lanes with paint ahead of having, the better improvements with newly paved surfaces, that would be great. And in any way we can highlight the edges of the crosswalks to make them narrower, or having flashing beacons on them. I think we need. I believe that the flashing beacons have helped tremendously in other areas of town at night. I'm not sure that they make a huge difference during the day, but they do make a huge difference at night. Because of some of the things, like people don't wear reflective clothing and stuff, and so drivers don't see someone crossing the street. And I think that all the crosswalks that are near, the apartment complexes should have flashing beacons. Otherwise, how do people navigate their neighborhood? Right? Again, it's I think in Acton more than other places, 2A is a neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I have nothing useful to add at all, but I am in the same camp of that I don't always think it's necessarily speed. I think there's a lot of distracted driving. And I enjoy seeing an Acton police cruiser parked every mile or so. However, I don't want state troopers crawling on Great Road, so I don't know if that was as a result of the tragedies, if they had to have a presence, but I just think that that's not good either, so that's just my.
Imogen.
Yeah, I agree with all the suggestions made. And one quick thing to add, I don't know if this is possible, but maybe seeing if we can do anything with the driver's ed and helping kids feel a little bit more prepared, especially as we're kind of nearing winter and driving conditions are only going to get worse from here. But I don't know if that would involve working with the school. I'm not exactly sure where driver's ed kind of fits into the whole structure, but that might be something to consider as well.
Thank you. So moving along, item 9 under new and special business, we were going to release some executive minutes, session minutes from previous years, but they're still undergoing legal review and they're not yet ready for release. So we'll pass over that. Moving to the consent items, I'm going to hold item 10 for discussion and move along to item 11, accept conflict of interest disclosure, Gregory D. Hutchins. Item 12, approve committee appointments, Chelsea Reinhold and Mary Hurley, full members, Acton Boxborough Cultural Council, terms to expire June 30th, 2025. Item 13, poll petition, Eversource, Concord Road at Main Street and Newtown Road. Item 14, accept gift Recreation Department for $125 from the Pet First Aid fundraiser towards the Acton Dog Park. Item 15, accept gift Planning Division for $8,340 from Cheryl Gould towards the Sidewalk Fund, as stated in the Planning Board Decision 19-02, Condition 3.3.6, 484-46 Great Road. Item 16, approve a one-day alcoholic beverage license, Samantha Larkin, December 3rd, 2022, 50 Audubon Drive, Recreation Center. Number 17, one-day alcoholic beverage license, Moods Day Spa, December 14th, 2022, 556 Massachusetts Avenue. Accept a motion to accept consent items 11 through 17 inclusive.
So moved.
You get a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor of accepting those items, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Going back to item 10, we had a proposed schedule of meeting dates for this board. And I note August 7th, we usually only have one meeting in August anyway. That particular date, I will be out of the country and not available on the internet. And I'm suggesting instead if we meet on August 21st, if that meets with the approval of the board.
You said the 21st, sorry.
21st, yes. Okay. In that case, I would ask for a motion to approve item 10, proposed 2023 meeting schedule as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, go ahead.
Moved, second, and third. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. I will entertain one more motion.
I move to adjourn.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much.